2, 1. All right, here we are with, what is this, episode 18 of our 2014 action plan? Happy Tuesday night, everyone. And JD has a headache, so we'll try to be really nice to JD, or not, as the mood strikes, depending on what we feel like.
I wasn't asking for special treatment. I was just saying. I was just
Sure you were.
letting everyone know that if I wasn't speaking a whole lot, it was because of that. But now, now I'm worried.
Worried about what? We're nice people. We're
Uh,
nice people.
have you seen the
Speak for
last?
yourself.
Have you seen the last couple of episodes? I've been like, it's just been pile on JD. It's just been, uh, it's been a sad time. Just a sad time.
Yes. Because we're not nice. And I believe it was Fishy who said that conservatives are not nice people, and we're just trying to, live up to that reputation. So aren't there some primaries happening today? Isn't today Nebraska or something? Anybody? No? Or is Nebraska next week?
Yeah, shows how much I've been paying attention. Sorry.
Okay, yeah, Nebraska, I'm looking at the thing. Nebraska and West Virginia are today. I know, and see, that's the thing. Last Tuesday was Ohio, North Carolina, and Indiana. Today is Nebraska and West Virginia, and the Nebraska race was one of the ones that was, it was billed as Tea Party versus the establishment, but we had Ben Sass and Shane Osborne, and there was it's like Freedom Works was backing one guy, and the ACU was backing another guy, and then it became he said, she said, and I lost track and I lost interest. And, and that's kind of a symptom of my whole thing this year. I really wanted to the whole idea behind this whole action plan thing was to try to drive activity and participation in the primaries so that we can get good Senate candidates, and so that our guys in November are the best representatives of the conservative movement that we can possibly get. And not only have I not succeeded in driving interest from other people, I haven't been able to maintain interest on my own. I've got a whole big bucket of I don't care going on, and I don't know how to fix that.
Well, and what is everybody focused on? It's not 2014. We warned people last year, don't get stuck on 2016, and yet everyone's still positioning. I mean, we're hearing about Jeb Bush, we're hearing about Rand Paul, and people mischaracterizing his comments and about voter ID and whatever. I mean,
yeah,
it's a headache. It's too much, and people aren't. I don't know. People aren't paying attention. Oh, right. Yeah, that's a good one. JD brought up. Does Hillary have
brain damage,
health issues, and whatever? Yeah, let's talk about that stuff instead of actually, I don't know, positioning ourselves to win the Senate.
And there's going to be so many complaints in November about how the candidates that we have running are lame, and then if we do drag a GOP candidate over the finish line and we get the majority, then they're not going to be conservative enough, and it's going to be, guys, the whole idea was in January, February, and March was when we could have really had some impact on changing the Republican Party, and we didn't. And there was, because it really, really is, God help me, it's hard to sustain interest in this crap. And it's just a lot easier to think about the one presidential candidate than to try to keep track of Senate candidates and which race do we care about. And
yeah, it's easier, but JD can speak to the draft that just happened and how many people there are involved and how many permutations there could be, and then what? What's our excuse?
Well,
It's so sad. It's so disgusting and disheartening that
2 days ago, I voted against a $1.2 billion bond issue for my school district. There was, what, 5% voter participation? And the thing
yeah.
passed 2-1 because nobody cares. Yeah.
And
We just had our
what's really sad is that you just had this event, this massive event last week, which I participated in fully. I was very much enthralled and paid a lot of attention to the NFL draft, where you had, you know, all these different teams. We had 32 different teams picking somewhere between, like 4 and 12 players out of a pool of, I don't know, at least it's over half of Congress, the amount of players that get drafted every year. So and people who have read and done serious research on, people, on backgrounds, on out of school habits, on do they have injury history, do they have personality problems, have they ever committed a crime, what was the extent of their crime, did they miss a game in college, whatever, how were their grades, did they, have any problems there, do they do drugs, all those various things.
Are they
And
gay?
I wasn't gonna mention that, but
Elephant in the room, yes.
But that is the biggest story that came out of the whole
yeah,
event.
absolutely, it is, and it's crazy also because at the beginning of the process, back in February, when this news came out, Michael Sam said, "I want to be treated as a football player and not as a gay person." And of course that flipped, and you have so much Michael Sam derangement syndrome on both sides,
Hmm.
and it's just really it's annoying and depressing, and the fact that it has to keep on going and perpetuating itself is just not just, I didn't have a problem with him kissing his fiance. I probably think that, to me, when I saw that, I thought, oh, that's nice. And then as it's been going on, oh, not only is it nice, but they probably got paid a ton of money from TMZ to
Right?
have the rights to the image or whatever. And so, it's probably been propagated all across, the amount of money that the guy got. And if if um if you're going to offer me millions of dollars for taking a picture of something I was probably already going to do, um, it just there's a lot of, as I said, there's a lot of derangement on both sides. But these are things that were heavily researched. Like, I did hours of research on Michael Sam on the chance that the Jets picked him up. I did hours of research on Darqueze Dennard from Michigan State on the chance that he was going to get picked up. Like, ridiculous stuff that I probably, shouldn't have been doing, just because but I'm passionate about my team. I really love my football team, and I want to know, I want to see what they have, what's out there, and who they should pick. Not that it has any real effect at all. And that's the thing that drives me nuts in this analogy, is that I don't have any effect on who the Jets draft. No matter how much research I do, no matter how big a sure thing I think a player is going to be, I have no say in it. I don't have a vote. Meanwhile, I have a vote in a primary election, Republican primary election. I get to choose who my team picks,
And
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 I'm not
also
doing that.
whether the Jets
I
win
mean,
or
I am, but people aren't.
also the whether the Jets win or lose, it doesn't have any effect on you. And
Well,
if there's a good
I
or bad politician, that actually does have an effect on you.
Yeah, I wouldn't be so quick to dismiss the impact of football on life, because there's something to be said for vicarious success. the
Okay,
fun
it's at
effects
best
from that.
it's at best a dotted line. It's at best a dotted line. But politicians.
Hey, see, you're saying that it's at best a dotted line, but are you a very passionate fan about any football team?
No.
Okay, well, it's a little bit more than a dotted line for some of us. There really
It's
is an impact. It is that big a deal. It absolutely is that big a deal. Andy, is it that big a deal? Thank you. Andy says yes, it is that big a deal.
okay, sure. I
Actually, that's Corey saying yes, it's a big deal because the
Oh,
entire world comes to a standstill around our house for an entire week at draft time.
yeah, that's what happens. It's like, and
I force Corey to be as silent as a Muslim wife. And she walks 10 paces behind me.
No, I avoid the
Just
house at all costs.
carrying the draft book, carrying the book of stats.
Look, books,
Books.
plural.
And by the way, Darquez Denard, I agree.
I love that guy. I thought he was such a good player.
Sorry, I don't want to do this to everybody else.
Sorry, that's right.
Well-
That's right. That's right.
But-
I want to note for the record who brought up football.
but the question is, how do you
It was Corey.
and I know that politics is never going to be as interesting as entertainment is, because that's, entertainment versus politics. They're just different things. But how do we get people to care more?
That's not true. That's not true. That thing that you just said about politics and entertainment are not the same thing. That's not true. Not anymore. There is a huge cross section of politics as entertainment, and that's where you get people like Bill O'Reilly and Sean Hannity, and you get people like that. That is politics as entertainment. There is a huge overlap of those two. It just means the impact of the politics as entertainment versus the impact of actual politics is drastically different. I personally think. Fishy,
They have very different goals, but
Yeah.
essentially, we talk about people wanting to be affirmed. That's an upcoming piece that I'm working on. People that can't step outside of where they are, their bubbles. It's why we create those things, because they want to be affirmed. They don't want to. They'd rather be right than be winning.
Mhm.
It's maddening, but that was the reason that I brought up the draft and everything, because we did all see so much more energy poured into that than we did over the real serious questions that involve our nation. And maybe that's partly purposeful. Maybe that politics is so complex anymore that it tunes people out, and that they don't think they have an effect. Whereas at least with football, you still feel a part of something. Too many of us get sold out by political parties or whatever, and then who cares anymore? I'm not playing on that team. I'm not going to join those guys. I'm
Or
not going to
maybe-
put on that jersey.
Or maybe it's that there's a little bit less delusion. JD spends hours researching and dealing with the complexity of the draft and analyzing stats and complex relationships of this, that, and the other to try to determine who would be best. But he doesn't delude himself into thinking. He knows he has no effect on what happens and what choice the Jets make. So he's not then disappointed when they make a decision that he disagrees with. Whereas if you're voting, you're going to research and you might think, I have some ability to affect, and then when your cause loses, you personally lost. So there's actually you had the illusion that you could affect something, and then you didn't, so then you're disillusioned and you're going to step away and say, screw politics, I don't care, I'll go pay attention to the Kardashians.
Yeah, but part of the problem with that is that I think we're trying to do too much. We want all or nothing. And we have to find a way to get over that as a movement, because if you go into something, especially like politics, all or nothing, you're going to end up with nothing.
I also want to point out that I am not typical when it comes to my draft, paying attentiveness. But I basically, of the non-political blogs that I read, there's only one that I pay attention to every single day, and that's the Jets blog. And I am one of very, very, very many commenters there. And that thing that you just described about people who have done the research and, oh, well, it's the team's decision, it's not mine. That is not, there are tons of people who rage and get so upset about the team not making the same decisions as they suggest or want. And trust me, the same kind of depression sets in, the same kind of. You would be shocked to see the similarities between the fan bases of at least the fan base for the Jets. I can only speak for my own experiences here. The fan bases for the fan base for the Jets and the Republican Party, they are so incredibly similar. You get the same kind of type of people. You get the Tea Party. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I said, yeah, you do.
Yeah, you get the diehards. The party can do no wrong. Everything is going, just swimmingly. We're great. We're fine.
And this year we're gonna win.
And this year we're gonna win, exactly. And those Patriots suck, and the Dolphins suck, and the Bills all suck. Everybody sucks except we're really, really good. You have those kind of people, irrational exuberance types. You have the down on everything guys who are, everything was the wrong move, and these people don't know what the hell they're doing, and they're just awful, and I don't know why I'm a fan of this team anymore. I'm just going to go and watch college football. There's so many direct parallels. It's not even funny. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, then why is sports so popular and politics just isn't? I mean, why is it so easy to get people interested in sports, and in politics, we are very deeply engaged in politics, and we were all like, "Oh, let me check the calendar. Wasn't the Nebraska primary today?"
Because it's more fun. Because it's more fun to watch football. Football is fun to watch.
And get it this way, when you're talking about the Nebraska primary, do we know even who is in that seat? Not much, because it doesn't, it's not somebody that's high profile. It's not somebody that's, that's on the national stage on a regular basis, and so therefore we don't have to pay attention to it. The teams, you have people down here that like teams from the West or teams from the East or whatever. You get to choose those guys. The guys in Nebraska, if it's not your guy, you're pretty much not paying attention unless he's some kind of superstar.
I actually think that Rush Limbaugh put it the best when he was talking about the popularity of sports. And I mean, the intensity is the same. Corey had, by the third round the other day of the draft, Corey basically had me chained in the basement to keep me from burning down the house. I was so angry at the Green Bay picks. And I hadn't really felt that way since the nomination of John McCain. So, she had to basically keep me from burning. In other words, you get very, very angry with either. But what Rush Limbaugh said is that the great thing about sports is that it is the one area of life, or one of the few, where you can completely invest yourself emotionally with no cost, with no consequence. Nothing happens at the end of the day that really affects the world. And
that's true, right?
And that's why it gets a little tiring sometimes when people inject their political bias or this kind of stuff. They were talking last night about how Michael Sam is being treated phenomenally well versus how Tim Tebow was not treated well by much of the press. And they're right, and it's ridiculous. Why can't we just let these guys be football players? Geez, I hope they play well. But instead, the press has to jump in and turn even that into all politics. And the reason even a lot of liberals don't like that, it's like, dude, you're wrecking this for us. Don't you understand this is the one island where we can all come together? and not think about politics, not think about things that do affect our lives for a while. We'll get back to those. What really upsets me, though, is that too many Americans never get back to the things that matter.
Right.
They only want escape. I think the escape's great. I think it's great to get away for a bit, but too many Americans are hooked on the escape. It's like it's their cocaine, and then that's all they want. Does that make sense?
Opiate of the masses. Opiate of the masses.
Exactly.
Well,
Except we
and
provide
that's
our own bread in circuses.
And that's true, and that's how a lot of political malfeasance is done. There's Cy-Fair got their $1.2 billion bond because only 12,000 people voted
That's incredible.
in the entire. Wait, no, I think it was only 9,000 people voted. There were 3,000 votes against and 6,000 votes for. There were only like 9,000 people that voted, and when I was at the polling place on Saturday afternoon, she said that the election official said she expected it to be about 5% turnout. And if it's 2-1, then that means that about 3% of the voters wanted that bond. That's not even a statistically significant real number. I mean, 3% of the voters wanted it, period.
Leslie, one thing that I've told some of my friends, like at work, who maybe lean conservative or whatever, and they're big sports fans like me, I'll tell them, look, here's why you want to be more involved politically. Because you can't, and they're mostly Bronco fans. There's a different kind of illness. It's just, sorry, it's not Green Bay. It's just not right. I mean, here's what I tell them. I say, guys, here's the neat thing about politics. With sports, you can't affect the plays that are being called by the Broncos. You can't affect anything they're doing. We can't affect anything they do on draft day. In politics, you can affect it. And it affects you.
You can join the freaking team.
Right.
Right, you could show up at a meeting and vote at a meeting. You could, and if you show up to every meeting, they'll probably put you in charge of a committee.
Yeah, yeah. So careful.
They're trying to do that to me.
But you know what I mean? I mean, that's
what happened? I'm a placeholder for state senate at the General Assembly.
Because you show up, yeah, and that's that's where I'm kicking myself for not showing up. And I on Saturday I was talking to the people at the voting place, and I was mad, and they were all mad, and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe it. Besides which, the fact that the election was on May 10th, and it was I had to go to one of the schools to vote against the school getting more money, and then there was another election for my emergency services district, and I'd have to drive to the drive to the fire station to vote against the fire station getting some money, and they had people that were on Saturday having to drive to 4 different polling locations. And then there's the runoff election that was in 2 weeks, Fish? Statewide runoff is in 2 weeks, so that's a different thing. And then we had our primary, a couple months ago. They're on purpose. They're making this as inconvenient as possible because that's how they get all their bad things passed. Because the people who are motivated to vote are the people who are going to make some money off of this stuff passing. So they're going to show up and vote, and they're going to get all of their relatives and friends and future employees to go vote. And people like me, there's not any advertising campaign to vote no on the bond issue. There's not any, because how do you get somebody to spend a lot of money to vote no on a bond issue?
And I had that conversation with JD on the same night when the results came in, is why do we lose these things? Why do we have 2 reformers kicked off of the Katy ISD board?
Right.
It's because the people who are heavily invested are heavily invested. And challengers have a huge hurdle to get over because they're not
Right.
going to promise contracts. They're not going to get their cronies, these things. And this is Texas has got in the top of state and local debt in the country. It's one of the top 3 states, I think, behind only New York. And that's because these things pass with, 2% of the vote in an area, because that's the way they want it. And of course, Leslie, you're awful, because how could you be against more money to children?
Oh, I hate children. I don't. I want them to be. I want them to be stupid.
It's the Common Core.
Right.
You don't love the children, and don't you understand that Houston is growing and the school district is growing so much? We need more money. Yeah, you're growing, so your tax base is growing, so you'll be getting more money. Just make do.
Can I tell you the opposite, which has been happening out in Colorado for the most part? And now, you see, yesterday Fishy writes this brilliant article about the Tea Party and where they're messing up. And I'm telling you what, to say you hit a home run on that is, is an understatement.
Yeah.
And let me show you one great example of the Tea Party doing it right, is on these kinds of bond issues. The reason they always pass is because we had nothing on the right except, the Republican Party, right? That's all we had was the GOP. And the GOP couldn't motivate the base at times of issues like tax increases, bond increases, and so forth, right? It is the Tea Party alone out here that has overwhelmingly driven the masses. So you don't just have the interested parties on the other side outvoting you so they can, get money. We have been shooting down tax increases out here in Colorado darn near 2-1. And it's all Tea Party led. And then of course they turn around and do the wrong thing and shoot their own and kill each other off and all this at election time a lot of times. But I just wish they would look at their effectiveness of what they're doing out here. What you guys are lacking down there in Texas and Houston, these areas, is the Tea Party doing what it's doing up here, rallying at those times, and they swamp the voting booths, or or the mail-ins or whatever, on these issues out here.
Right, and that's also a good point of comparison because of the organizational level that's been achieved in Colorado. It's much more, the threat is much more serious, visible. The Colorado model switch and the handover of power is still very fresh there. In Texas, A, we're invincible, and B, the Tea Party that's here believes that they have many more people with them than they do, and that all they have to do, and this has been a problem from the beginning, that all you have to do is speak the truth and everyone will come to your side, because who can argue against fiscal responsibility?
Yeah, lots of people can argue against fiscal responsibility.
And Tea Party has been demonized as, the far-right Republican nut job, right-wing, hate children, hate teachers, hate unions, all this stuff. And so our folks that did work at the Tea Party, that did get involved and did run candidates and did have 2 reformers that were elected in 2011, got swept by significant margins because they were still thinking that 2010 was now, and it's not. And there's too many people that think that Tea Party concepts play, but they don't, the way they're currently messaged, which, of course, made me write that piece.
Well, and I think there's a lot of the bad messaging is kind of comes at it from both directions. There's the Eric Erickson super confidence because Wendy Davis, she's at the top of the ticket and she's never going to win, so boom, no worries, Texas is fine. That whole overconfidence thing. And then there's the other side that tries to be a bit too conciliatory and a bit too reasonable. The Tea Party, they're a bunch of crazies. So I may be Republican, but I'm very reasonable. And to be fair, the left has that's your point is valid. And there's the side there's the part of the Republican branch or the conservative branch that gives too much credence to the left's arguments, and we accept their premise rather than disagreeing with it, and we find ourselves battling on the left's battlefield.
Yeah, I think you just described me.
I don't know. Maybe sometimes, and we're all there sometimes.
Right, but I mean, I'm asking myself the question.
There has to be a happy medium, and I don't want to be, the rabid right or the rabid Tea Party crazy guy, but then you also don't want to be the one who is agreeing with the left's premise. There's a way to, and the whole Rand Paul voting thing, that's kind of an example. There's a way to make your point about voting ID being the absolute right thing without accepting the left's premise that the right needs to shut up about it because it's a bad argument, which is what people assumed Rand Paul said.
Right, and let's delineate between what he said and what it's being characterized.
Right. The assumption is that Rand Paul sold us out and thinks that the right should shut up about voter ID, and I for one, I assumed that was and reading what he said, that is kind of what he said. He may not have meant it, and he may not have said what he meant quite elegantly or quite well enough, but he did kind of accept the premise that the arguments against voter ID are valid, and we need to not fall into that. And he allowed himself to be taken that way. He was also not the far right, voter ID is great, how can you disagree with voter ID? He didn't thread the needle and make the point that voter ID is an absolutely valid thing, and it is in fact increasing participation because it increases your confidence in the polls, and we see that participation in black communities goes up, and he didn't dispute the premise. Like when I love Newt Gingrich is when he's asked a lefty question and he absolutely disputes the premise.
Well, but at the same time, what we're talking about is, if we're attempting to say on the right, which a lot of people are, there's a whole industry, True the Vote around, saying that voter fraud is the thing that is preventing the will of the people from being enacted. Okay, if you're going to make that argument, you need to have proof, and there's difficulty in getting proof, and I understand that, because you can't bring cameras into a polling location, and you can't tail people from poll to poll as they go vote. You can catch what you can catch. But secondarily to that, if you are concerned with winning by an overwhelming margin, voter ID and voter fraud,
that's not a winning issue. I mean, it's not a top of ticket issue. It's not a top of mind issue. So, I mean, I think I'm more concerned that people actually.
You froze out. So the last 10 seconds of stuff that you said, you couldn't hear.
Sorry, no, I was just saying that if you're going to make that case that voter ID and voter fraud are issues that are costing people their legitimate results of the elections, you have to admit that if we won by larger margins, if we spent our capital on voter participation and turnout, like in these elections we're talking about, if you really pushed for people to participate, to be knowledgeable, and you spent the effort going to talk to people and bringing those people to the polls, then the issue of voter fraud doesn't matter as much. It takes a lesser importance because you can outvote the margin of fraud.
If they cheat 1,000 votes and you win by 2,000 votes, you still win.
Right. Well, and I don't know what you guys have in your areas, but here in Colorado, we have a really big problem with the voter rolls just not being updated and cleaned up. For instance, if we moved from Jefferson County to Arapahoe County, we registered to vote here in Arapahoe County and just assumed that our voter registration would transfer because it's all done through the DMV, which gives their information to the Secretary of State, but that's not how it works. So we were actually registered in 2 different counties until the next election cycle when our ballot from Jefferson County was returned to the elections office stating that we no longer lived there. And so, we have huge problems with also removing people from the voter list. For instance, if I know that my neighbor has moved, but they haven't updated their information, I don't really have a way to contact the county clerk and recorder and let them know that they need to be, removed from that list.
No, but that's your low down on the totem pole party person who can take care of that, though, and should be.
It's not the party. There are state laws in place that don't allow us to clean up our voter rolls. And those
No, I get that, but at least for information purposes, somebody knows, and they can take that. If everybody was doing that on a regular basis in different areas, you might be able to drum up some support for passing better legislation. But I think you really have to change your elected officials before that happens.
This is another problem, though. Now that Colorado has gone to, last year they changed the voting rules, so you no longer vote at a precinct polling place. You can go anywhere at these voter centers in your county. So there's no checks and balances to make sure you don't vote multiple times by going to place after place. They also reactivated everyone who's on the voter rolls. So the way that it used to work was if you were inactive, they didn't mail you a ballot, but now they've reactivated everyone, no matter how long it's been since that person voted, and they're mailing out ballots. So if you get an old ballot or a ballot for the person who lived at the house beforehand, you fill it out, you send it in, there's no way to track who actually voted it. And,
oh my God.
Yeah, and it gets better. If you show up at a polling location, all you need for ID is a quote-unquote current utility bill. How hard is it to scan in a utility bill, print out some information, change the name, and use an address and turn it in? Not only that, but no longer is it a provisional ballot that you're given for that vote. It's a real ballot, and it is turned in, and there's no way to isolate it.
Yeah,
Wow.
we used to have similar rules to that until we passed our voter ID business. It's very, very different now, but you used to be able to walk in with a checkbook.
Yeah.
And vote, or a utility bill. And yes, of course, people like me are sitting there thinking about 800 ways to get, that people could actually vote fraudulently. But again, margin.
Well, and I think the margin of fraud used to be 1%, maybe 2%. I believe that the margin of fraud has increased because I believe that fraud has become so much easier, and that the left, and because let's face it, I don't really think there are any organized voting fraud groups on the right. I'm going to make a completely unfounded assumption.
We gotta get on that. We need to start working on that. Get our guys on that.
The Koch brothers are really behind the times here, but I believe that the left has organized and really accomplished a lot in getting their voting fraud organization to really bump things up, and I think that they are affecting down ticket races.
Oh, very much so.
In a lot of places.
Our races are much closer now than they were 10 or 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have 4 or 5 points separating candidates. It's a half a point.
Right. And if there is more fraud happening, which I think there is, because it's become much easier these days with technology and the organization of the left, and races are, I think, by nature a lot closer, and participation is way down.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have, voter participation is down in every race, in every election.
Well, let me tell you a story.
I think there's so much more fraud happening, and then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because people feel like there's a lot more fraud, so why bother? And so then they don't, so then the participation drops, and then it's easier for fraud to really affect things.
No, that makes sense, but let me tell you a little story that may make the point a little bit more clear. There is a group that's a watchdog group that started looking into districts in a particular area, and they were looking for, and some of you may know this story and know who I'm talking about, they were looking for multiple registrations, potentially fraudulent registrations, people that would have registrations to a vacant lot, or 12 or 14 registrations to a 2-bedroom house, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a great thing to do. And what they did is they started with a black congressperson's district. That was completely and irrevocably going to be forever Democrat. Okay. And so what that says to the people that are on the left is that this is a race issue we can use. We don't care if it's actually a race issue. This is a race issue we can use against that group, Republicans, conservatives, Tea Parties. And that's what I think, and it may be nuanced, but that's what I think we're looking at. We are looking at people, or what we're failing to see is that the things that we do say about voter fraud end up being spun,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes not even having to be spun by the other side to continue the demonization of our side, which just wants things to be done right. It just wants a fair election, but that is not what the other side is giving people in the middle.
Well,
It's
and
about-
because we're buying the premise that we need to prove that voter fraud exists in order to justify fighting against it. You know what? A bank doesn't have to prove that they've been robbed in order to justify locking the door.
Sure, but I think the thing that Fishy is getting at, and maybe I'm wrong here, but at least to me, what the way that this whole discussion ends up is that you have a question of costs.
Mhm.
Right now we have some amount of voter fraud. We aren't sure how much, but what we are sure of, and what we can quantify, is the amount of retribution we get for delving into the issue of voter fraud
In an unwise way.
in an unwise way. Yes, where we can be targeted because we are, because we want to go after high-risk districts with, chances that the chance that there's some voter fraud is higher, and a lot of those areas are urban areas, are going to be, highly black. You have that sort of thing. The cost that it's going to take us, when we're talking about a hit that we're going to take in the community, a hit we're going to take nationally because, oh God, these racist teabaggers are being racists. There's so many different ways that we can be attacked on this, particularly when so it makes me think, it makes me feel as though, let's fight this fight, but let's fight it smart. Let's fight it in certain areas before we fight it in others, and let's try and be a little bit less crazed about it in certain circumstances. Is it a huge deal? Yeah, it's a huge deal. It's something that we need to address, but on the list of things that we need to address, it goes back to the whole argument. If you are winning by 2,000 votes and they're going to add a fraudulent 1,000, you are still going to win.
You know what?
It's just that.
What I do, JD, honestly, when I get in those discussions, I simply turn it on them. And I say, look, all I want is every vote a legal vote. So, and I'm talking to a liberal, a Democrat, or whatever. So just tell me, what steps would you take to ensure that? Okay, what are your steps to ensure that? And they're not used to getting this because what they're used to doing is attacking the steps we offer. And so I lead with asking what their steps are. And you've not seen people get more tongue-tied in your life.
I agree, but
then you're on offense.
It's also not an individual. It's also not an individual issue, though. That's the problem. It's not a fair one-on-one discussion that we're having here. This is a community against the Republican Party situation here, and it's hard to counter the message of, oh my God, look at these Republicans being racists.
Sure, but you can also craft messaging for that in ads and things like that. What are they off? By simply saying, what are the Democrats offering why don't the Democrats take any measures to ensure that votes are legal? Okay, I mean that implies a lot. Okay,
Yeah.
and at that point, what you're simply saying is, why don't they take any measures to, to ensure that votes are legal? We simply want votes to be legal. We'll take those measures in anywhere. We don't care. But we want to know. See, what we've done is we have focused the issue on ourselves. We're the ones carrying the torch to make votes legal. This is how we're going to do it. This way, this way, this way, this way, this. Step 1, step 2, step 3, whatever. And then we sit back and let them beat our brains in. You see, our messaging is ridiculous. Yeah, because self-indulgent messaging. In other words, we want to be everyone wants to be the conservative crusader on the issue, and we wind up, casting ourselves as villains. We allow them to frame us that way. No, 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 no. Instead, cast the issue as framing them as villains and come right out and say, why don't they ever offer any, why do they never pursue, legal voting? Why do they offer no, you know what I mean? Frame it that way.
What are you talking about? Too many people are being disenfranchised. All of those measures you're talking about, every single one of them that's on that list that you've been waving around in my face is a disenfranchisement of real Americans that are losing their legal vote. How dare you?
That's if I put out my list first. I don't lead with the list.
No, you wouldn't lead with the list, but what happens is they have that list in their head.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I say, you haven't answered the question.
What if they can't afford a driver's license? What if they don't know where their birth certificate is?
Once again, you're saying, what if they can't afford this? Why do you do this? To which my answer again is, I haven't even said what I do. I'm asking, what are you guys offering, and why are you not offering anyway?
No, I understand, but what you're going to come up against is the fact that all those guys went before you and did do just that. Now, you can one-on-one confront somebody about that, but I don't know how effective it is in a long-term, broad campaign simply because they still have that in their head.
But that's why the whole discussion I think is in the wrong direction. Yes, we want to have we want to have elections that are legal and are secure. But it's the cost. It's the costs that we need to be aware of. How much it's going to cost us politically through actual disenfranchisement of the voters in general, because they're going to see, oh God, these crazy Republicans are doing this thing. That's why I definitely agree with Rand Paul's distancing of the issue and taking it down a peg on the list of priorities.
But there was a way to do it without insulting his own party.
Right. See,
did he insult his own party?
Well, the way it was broadcast, yes, and he can't. If he's going to claim that he was taken out of context and he was misreported, then more fool him, because doesn't he know that what he says is going to be reported, whatever. It was reported that Rand Paul was telling the GOP to walk away from the voter ID issue, and that Rand Paul was positioning himself against those on the GOP side who are proponents of voter ID stuff.
And
what was reported was that he said we needed to shut up about it or whatever.
The same thing that would happen if he were to talk extensively among a lot of conservative Republican, especially the religious end of it, people about mandatory, getting rid of mandatory minimum sentencing or drug issues. Now he's a complete libertine who's out for people to do whatever they want. That is the mischaracterization that our side is doing to him. And it's like people like, going back to my piece again, I'm going to keep saying it, like Eric Erickson, who are in the middle of all this, making their reputations on this sort of thing. And it doesn't matter what the truth is. It matters whether they can stir up enough people to get a lot of hits to their website.
Right, because exclamation points sell. And anger gets people clicking, and oh my God, he's a rhino, and forget him. And
right,
there are ways for a Rand Paul to thread the needle when he's asked about voter ID, for him to say, I think it's absolutely important that American voters believe that their vote counts and is, you know, and is safe and legal and rare. I want voting to be safe, legal, and rare, and I think it's very important, and there are some organizations that are doing very good work about that. Now let's talk about my issue, blah, blah, blah. And he just doesn't even take a breath. He changes the subject. He supports the concept, and he changes the subject. That's the way to manipulate the press and to manipulate the story. Would it work or not?
No,
I
the way
don't
they
know.
manipulate the press is by saying, by appearing that you are not for this issue that is clearly a non-starter for well over half of the population of the United States. That's the thing. I can't fault Rand Paul for playing politics on this, and that's you know, just is it nasty? Is it the truth? But that's the thing. I totally don't mind this, and I've given passes to greater jerks than Rand Paul for you know, coming down on the wrong side of an issue. I think that like making this be a bigger deal than Mitt Romney's you know, implementation of Romney Care. You know,
No, and
there's
this is
like a
just an
billion
example.
different.
This is just a convenient example.
There are a billion different things that other politicians have done and said that amounted to much worse than Rand Paul's sort of, yeah, we should really be less vocal and loud and shouty about the whole voter ID thing, and you know, we'll put that on the to-do list. That's on there somewhere. We'll figure it and we'll pencil it in. We'll get some. We'll have some what do you call them? Lunch groups figuring out how we should you know, message this in the future. We'll do something about that. But I mean, if that's the kind of scrutiny that Rand Paul is going to get over something that, again, is not going to pass in most of the places where we need it to pass, I don't get it. I don't understand.
Let's look at it this way, okay? We're talking about a particular set of circumstances, too. Rand Paul is definitely on the 2016 list. And it is in any journalist, right, left, or middle, interest to find an angle with which to, you know, explore vulnerabilities. It's in our interest to know where our candidates' vulnerabilities are, but the play that happens is, oh, well, we're just going to knock this guy off. Oh, Christie, Bridgegate, he's gone. Oh, Rubio and immigration, he's gone. Cruz and whatever Cruz will find, he's gone. The idea is
Cruz in his mouth. Cruz in his mouth being open.
Right. Well, the whole thing is, you saw it happen in 2012. You saw it happen in 2008, where everything was structured around who can we knock off next? How can we take the media darling of this year and trash him before, you know, in time for the presidential race, because I'll make my reputation. And conservative bloggers and journalists are just as bad. I mean, I keep coming back to Eric Erickson, but he's really ticked me off. I've been asking myself all day if Eric Erickson is the kind of guy who's going to tell his wife she actually looks fat in that dress. Does he believe? Does he believe that that's what you do?
Guys, can I talk for a couple minutes as a former Democrat? How I view all this?
Yes.
Okay. Number one, I still believe Rand Paul will be our candidate. I strongly believe that. He's not my top guy. I happen to be a big Bobby Jindal fan. Rand Paul's in my top group, though. I think he's very good. The reason, as a former Democrat, I guarantee you, Democrats look at Rand Paul and they see by far the biggest threat to win with the GOP. And the reason is Rand Paul's views across the board poll much higher in public polling than any other Republican's views across the board. He's much more pacifist, non-interventionist. The country is war-weary. The country is moving fast toward, legalization of marijuana. He's fine with that. He is, and so forth. But he's also extremely. He takes much more seriously, cutting government in a lot of ways that polls extremely well. He makes huge inroads amongst young voters upon which the Democrats. If I were a Democrat right now, I would be terrified of this man, and I would be targeting him with absolutely everything I've got. I'd be afraid of him. I'd also be afraid of somebody like Jindal and a couple others. But I'd be terrified of him. Now, with the issue of the voting, I still say this. As a Democrat, my goal is this. I want a quick, effective message to making Republicans the bad guys. The last thing I want is some back and forth. And this is why I say the first thing we need to do in our messaging is put the target on them. Okay? Take the initial target off us. The worst thing we can do is either run from it, and I think I disagree with Rand on this. I think he's making it a bit of a mistake. I don't think it's his finest moment. I think it's going to evaporate within a couple days. I don't think it means anything. I think he's still going to be the candidate. But I disagree with him in that you don't run from this, because when you run from something like that, then the left just gets more excited. They see a weakness. Now the piranhas are going to circle. Now we got an issue where we really see division on their side and weakness in them. We can go after it. Don't do that. What I say is, once again, come out with a message of we all want legal. Just say, hey, we all want legal voting. We all want legal voting. All Americans want legal voting. Now, we know that's not true, but just say it. We all want legal voting. What are you guys proposing to ensure that? And why aren't you proposing anything to ensure that? Now, what you've done is you have made it so it's not a quick answer. They first have to defend themselves and then go after you. Now you've added a step for them that they don't want to be there, and it muddies the waters, and it makes the Democrat response much less effective. Rather than us just coming out as the crusaders to make sure those illegals can't vote, or that kind of thing. It's just more effective. Does that make any sense? Just kind of from a Democrat point of view, I would love you to either put the target on yourself, make yourself the bad guy, or leave the target on yourself, but try to run away from the target by not talking about it. No problem. I'll just move the site back on you. Yeah. But don't put it on me first. You've just added a step.
I think partly, though, you have to reconcile that with talking point messaging and having a limited amount of time to talk to people. It isn't a one-on-one proposition for a lot of people. In their personal lives, it is. But when you're talking about, mass media campaigns, you've got that. And as I said in the comments, we have this presumption that Rand Paul said what the reporting is saying that he said, and interpretation thereof.
Which is
and I don't think that's right. Yes, I would love to see the Democrats put on defense on this issue, and being able to say that in a way that's brief and quick and gives our side ammunition.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I think that would be obviously the best way to go. I don't know that Rand at his position can command that, because a candidate and the party are separate, and the party is not the least bit interested in dealing with this issue other than a red meat issue. And there's no one to do the messaging you're talking about.
Well, and my perception, and I haven't read through or listened to or researched this particular, because it's a minor issue as far as I'm concerned. It's the Rand Paul voter ID is a recent example of what is important for us to talk about, and more than 2 years out, now is the right time to be discussing this and figuring it out. And the perception that I got from the exchange and from the reporting on the exchange, because we all know that reality is whatever it's reported to be. So the reporting on the exchange is really what matters, because that's what sets people's perceptions. My perception is that the media asked Rand Paul about voter ID, and Rand Paul took a step towards the media and towards the left and agreed with them against us. And that makes me think about John McCain and all the times that John McCain took their side against us. And I don't want my candidate to be doing that. And I want my candidate to be sharp enough that he can thread the needle and answer the question without taking sides against me.
Well, he did.
I have one question for that. I just want to. Would you have had less of a problem with it if McCain actually had won?
Yes. I mean, well, wait a minute. What would I have had less of a problem with it if McCain had won? Can you rephrase that in a way where I know whether I want to answer yes or no? I hated McCain no matter what. McCain was always against me, and I would have had a problem with anybody siding with the media against me, even if he won. Yes.
Okay.
You know, first of all, I believe Rand Paul made a mistake here. I don't think it was nearly as bad or to the degree of the ones that McCain made. I think that was.
Oh, no.
But and I know what you're saying. He only took a step in the direction where McCain has walked miles. I get that.
Right. It was reminiscent of. It was like, oh my God, the warning signs went off. Okay, I need to watch out, or Rand needs to get a little bit better about this.
Right. And by the way, Leslie, I think you're right. And I think, but the difference being is, McCain, the reason he walked miles in that direction, whereas Rand Paul only took a step, is because McCain believes in that direction. Rand Paul was only making a strategic move.
Right.
Quite honestly, he's going to learn from within moments.
I sure hope so. Yes, exactly.
I'm confident he will. You see, once again, you know, and I know, I guess I'm in a minority here, but I think the messaging, both in ads and one-on-one, is very simple. First, put the target on them. Give them an extra step to fight off the target, and then the public loses interest much more quickly in the issue.
Here's my question, I suppose, about this sort of thing, because I'm looking at, you know, the list of candidates that we've got out there. Of course, Rick Perry's name's been thrown out, and you know, some other people that have some. Rick Santorum, God help. You know, there are a lot of people whose names are in the hat. The guy who's fundamentally been fighting for me, most consistently, in my view, is Rand Paul, and I don't think the guy's getting enough credit. I mean, even Ted Cruz's boo-boos are a lot bigger to me than this. And that sort of, I look at the drone conversation, I look at the drug conversation, the sentencing, the incarceration conversation, and all the other things that he's talking about, and I come down on the fact that those things are far more important to quality of life, to winning, to having, oh, thank you, privacy, yes. Those things are far more important in the long run, not only to advancing our values, but you know, they more directly affect our lives. When we get to something like voter ID, which is a, face it, fringe issue for a lot of people, it's so much easier for us to be made to look bad, and so I think that it looks like a more egregious, I guess, breach here for you guys than I believe it truly is. And when you put it all together and you're looking at where voter ID falls on the list of things that we really have to be concerned about messaging, I think downplaying it from you know, DEFCON 1 to DEFCON 3 is a good move.
It is.
And so I think that is where he has been trying to go. And I can say that because I know the groups that have been working on voter ID. I know a lot of the comments that come out of some of the people that have been working on election integrity. And there are some great people on those causes, and there are some nut job bad messengers on those causes. And again, Rand is playing defense for us instead of necessarily getting in our way. I think he's attempting to move the conversation away from lower priority things, DEFCON 3, 4, 5, instead of the high priority privacy and security and drones and things that are at the top of the list and should be. But we have too many people that want to pick their issue and make it the issue, and that's a big problem.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm sorry about the DEFCON business. I'm from the color-coded era, so I don't know if DEFCON 1 is a red or a green.
One is red.
Orange.
One is red.
One is orange.
DEFCON 5, everything's cool. DEFCON 1, we're all going to die.
Again, as I said, DEFCON is before my time. I don't know DEFCON. I know the rainbow chart.
You saying we're old?
Yes, he is saying we're old.
Yes, I'm saying.
I think bringing it down in DEFCON length, I think it's perfect. What Rand Paul did was perfect in that regard. But it did come off as dismissive of the base, and that's the only thing I think he needs to word it a little better. But guys, this is minor.
Yeah.
This guy generally has been hitting home runs.
Oh, I have no problem with him on substance. It was, and for it to be 2 years out, for him to make this stylistic mistake, and for us to call him on it, and hopefully he'll learn from it and say, oh, okay, I see. The reason it sets off alarm bells for me right now is he's 2 years out. He's starting to raise his profile. He's getting even more so and getting very serious about it and for real, and the for real attention, and it's going to start going to his head right now. And if his instinct is to side with the media against us on that issue, is he going to do that on other issues too? And it set off stylistic alarm bells to me, and I hope he learns from it, and I hope he dials himself back down or finds a different way of saying what he intended, so that he doesn't come off as being anti the right.
Well, he's going to come off as being anti the right to people like, say, Erickson. I keep picking on him, but I really want to kick him in the shins. But this is what goes on in primaries. We're just having it a year early, or a year and a half early, because this is what we do. We eat our own, and that's what I think is happening here, more so than Rand Paul taking a huge misstep. I think it is our guys are already disgusted with him. The people on the red meat right are really disgusted with him already for being willing to go those places. I mean, look, I've been in that position with people that I've talked to in meetings I've led, and the whole thing has been, if you're not in line with this base that calls itself the base, then you're a rhino and you're cast out and there's no hope for you and there's no way you'll ever be supported. And you know those people. You've seen them on comments everywhere. Well, I'll never vote for X. I'll never vote for Chris Christie. I'll never vote for Marco Rubio. You've seen it over and over. That is what I think is going on, more so than Rand making a some kind of misstep.
And is there anything that can be done about that? I mean,
sorry, I have barky dogs. I'm sorry.
I mean, is there? Yes, I recognize the problem with the Eric Erickson, and Michelle Malkin is much the same way, as is Ann Coulter. I mean, we know the people who have the high profile, and they make their money from being rabid, and they are the rabid right, and they have their minions, and I agree with them sometimes, and I disagree with them other times, and there are plenty of times I wish they would just shut the hell up. And I'm sorry if some of the names I just threw out are people that you're desperately in love with. Those three, just Eric Erickson, Ann Coulter, and Michelle Malkin, just happen to drive me freaking crazy most of the time. And Eric Erickson most of all. I hope he's not listening to this, but whatever. Guess I'm not going to get a job at Red State. Guess I'm not going to get a job at Red State. But what can we do? I mean, is there anything that can be done about it? You know, one, we don't want our candidates giving them as much ammunition as they do.
Right.
But, you know, what can we do other than try to be the voice of calm?
Well, and that's what I try to do with my piece, is to talk about things like that. And, you know, it's not getting any readership, but I wrote it and I feel better for having written it. You know, and I'm putting it together in a series, but that is sort of, you know, that's all I can do, because I don't have Eric Erickson's voice. And that's the problem, is if I were acting in the manner of Eric Erickson, I would probably have a pretty darn big argument, a pretty darn big reach to be able to make that argument and have people go, oh, except red meat sells and moderation does not. And that is why, at least in the base. Now, again, flipping that script when you're talking politics in general, the people in the middle that Rand Paul has to pick up, those independents, those, you know, non-political people, apolitical people, he's going to hit homers with those guys like crazy, and our guys are going to hate him for it.
You know, your article, though, look, at some point, folks, at some point, in some way, we need to talk strategy with the base. We need to talk strategy with, and by the way, the same sentiments you express.
That's your job.
Yeah, no. I need somebody at least once a month to jump in front of me and get some arrows, okay, to absorb some arrows. But someone who has written a couple of recent articles, actually very much along the lines of what you said, is actually Ann Coulter, who has also really gone after the Tea Party, not in a hateful way, she loves the Tea Party, but in a way of saying, look, guys, why are we throwing out strategy? Look, if you don't win,
Right.
you know, then you have no vehicle to advance your principles. In fact, you're helping the people who hate you. And
Which is ironic coming from
Physician,
Ann Coulter.
heal thyself.
What?
Physician, heal thyself.
well,
In regards to Ann Coulter.
yeah, maybe. But she has written a couple articles that were right, and she has taken an enormous pounding from the Tea Party because of it, which I thought was interesting.
That's what I'm saying. And you know, normally they're loving the red meat that she throws out, because she's, you know, borderline offensive on some of the things that she says, if not outright offensive. And you know, she is one of these red meat people. It is fascinating to me that she came down, like, say, in support of Christie, which, you know, blew everybody's minds. Yeah, but I agree that point is correct. Do I think Ann Coulter is somebody who can carry that water? No.
No, I mean, and Ann Coulter is very much into strategy. I don't always agree with her, but what I mean is this. Her reason of coming down for Christie was very simple. She saw the dynamics of the 2012 election and what we were facing, and felt that it would take that kind of a powerful personality with that kind of a style to combat that on a national stage. To a degree, she was right. And we can see that the fact that Romney did not have that style, that kind of combative, in-your-face.
Take no prisoners. I'm going to fight. I'm going to win. I'm absolutely determined. Fire
Right.
in the belly. Yeah.
What I mean, there's no question. What Romney was missing more than anything was Chris Christieism.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, and also the country. We have not moved the needle in the country, especially in 2012, to accept more conservative positions. Not enough. Okay, and so Chris Christie, would he have sold better than Romney in the? Yeah, he would have. Would he have won? I don't think so. I don't think anybody could have won in that. But because the problem for Christie is so many Tea Partiers would have stayed home. So much of the base would. I mean, even much more than stayed home because of Romney.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why I'm so glad that you're doing things like Unite the Right, and why I want it freaking online somewhere, at least parts of it, because of that. Because our guys are not concerned with strategy. The base is concerned with being right. It's righteousness. And, you know, They're going to put the righteous indignation label on it and steal that right out from under Andrew Breitbart and call it a victory.
I just one quick point. What you said the base would have stayed back for Christie more than they stayed back for Mitt. I don't think the base really stood back for Mitt. I mean, if you look at the statistics, Mitt Romney had more of the base, had a bigger Republican turnout than McCain by far, and I don't know. I've not seen the data that shows that he had poor or weak Republican support. I mean, to me the 2012 election was about us not getting independent voters, and I think that's that was the major problem there. And I don't know, unless you have some data that I haven't seen.
Am I on yet?
Can you hear us?
Yeah,
Yes.
we can hear you.
Okay,
Oh,
our
okay.
computer's acting weird, so.
The polling I've seen, I guess maybe we've seen different polling. The polling I've seen is that Mitt did substantially better amongst independents than McCain did, and that there was a very sizable portion of the right that stayed home. I've heard the number 3 million tossed about, and overwhelmingly from evangelical conservatives and Tea Partiers. Did not turn out for Mitt nearly as much as they had in, say, 2010 and so forth. It was a big drop-off. And those were the numbers I've seen. I've seen them in several venues, but I can't reel them off for you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm just talking about the election results in general. Romney did end up with more votes than McCain.
Yeah, he did. Because he, from what I saw, he drew much better amongst independents. His performance against Obama amongst independents was much higher than McCain's, I believe. But I once again, I haven't seen those numbers for many months because I haven't cared. So
Yeah.
Well,
cares?
and
That was
by the
so-
way, if that's the case, if conservatives stayed home, then screw
did.
them.
Well, I think the problem was, and I've told a lot of people this, nobody was going to win against Obama in 2010 on the right because all of those people who were up on that stage, and it didn't matter if it was Romney, Rand Paul, Santorum, Newt Gingrich, anybody, any one of those who got up there because of the deep, deep divisions on the right was going to have millions stay home on the right, just different millions.
Right, because throughout that blistering primary,
Right.
your guy beat up my guy so badly, and your followers beat up my guy so badly that I don't.
We just lost Andy and Corey.
Yeah, they'll be back, I'm sure. But yeah, I think there was so much animosity, and that's where the right needs to really get a lot better about strategy and tactics and understanding, and really growing the hell up as a political party and as a political movement. We have so many people who are so self-indulgent, and they react rather than thinking, and we see it online. What are the posts and the stories and what are the things that get a lot of pluses and forwards and shares and comments? It's the red meat stuff. It's the photograph with a few stupid words on it. It's the inane. It's the shallow. It's the emotional. It's not the articles that make you think and wonder and how to be better. And it gets very, very depressing. Very depressing. It's like, you know what? Screw you guys. I'm just going to go watch I'm going to decide to pay attention to reality TV and to hell with politics, because this is too hard. It's not working. I'm not getting any results from all of this effort,
Well, and because we take it as a loss on our side when our representative of our branch of the movement doesn't win. And that's, whether it's the more moderate wing, the establishment groups, the religious wing, the Tea Party folks, we all take that as a loss instead of looking at it as a continuum. And
Yeah.
that's a
True.
serious, deep problem, a structural problem that we have on the right, because it's not enough to take opportunity and power away from Democrats and start from there. We have to dominate, and whoever's at the top of the pile is at the top of the pile, even if it's the pile that's shorter and has fewer votes and doesn't win or govern.
And we see things as individual, discrete elections and issues rather than the progressive movement all the way through that has, for 100 years, they take little losses because of the incremental gains that they're willing to accept that they make. And we tend to get involved in one particular campaign or an issue or event or whatever, and
Yes.
not see it as part of the conservative movement and changing hearts and minds.
We have a consistent set of values and principles that we want to advance, but we don't look at it as though we're advancing these things. We're looking at who can we pick that will match my values and represent me in the greater picture. Whereas, the left, they're going to argue about 100 different things, but they're not talking about those 100 different arguments. They are talking about everybody is going to get lifted. A rising tide lifts all boats for Democrats. Absolutely, for progressives. And that's in the media, that's in entertainment, that's in every aspect of their lives. It's not confined to their politics. And it's, again, why I think we have such a difficult time appealing in the cultural aspects of things, because we're not looking at we're looking at politics as sequestered from everything else. And
we're not understanding that politics is the way people organize society. Period. So if two people are in a room, there's politics going on. Any place there's more than one person, there's politics, and we have got to accept that politics is an integrated portion of everything. So when somebody brings politics into your ballet rehearsal, it's okay. When somebody brings politics into your football game, it's okay. That's just the way people are.
Well, and I think we need to not just give people permission to do that, but we need to, I guess, broaden and biggen our particular, focus. We are not going to do any good lurching from election to election, hoping that once we get this guy or once we win this office, we're done. We can go home.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like that. The progressives live a lifestyle. We're busy living our values and everything, but in the case of the only reason we want to intersect politics into our life is to make sure that we keep people out there who allow us to continue to do that. But what the left is doing is they're integrating everything about their life with the advancement of what they want. We just want to do it. We don't want to have to advance it because it's self-evident these are better principles. Obviously, if you really thought about it, if you were really logical, you would agree with me. But you're not. You're irrational, and so therefore, now I got to go to the polls. Now I got to walk a block. Now I got to support a candidate or whatever. They don't see it as, we don't see it as this is to be ingrained in every part of your life, and it gets exhausting, for people who make politics, a huge part of their life. I get that. But if that's the case, the people who are amateurs who are yelling from the sidelines need to take a lesson and start paying attention to some of the pros. And yes, that does mean listening occasionally to the establishment, which is another big red flag on our side.
Well, and how do you think they got to be the establishment? Because they were successful at whatever the goal was they set out for themselves. They set out I became the establishment because I decided I wanted to be a political consultant, and I've had a successful career as a political consultant, making a couple $100,000 a year for 20 years, and now that makes me the establishment. It doesn't make me a bad guy. It makes me successful at what I set out to do.
And interested in protecting the status quo, which
Right.
is, if you want to change the status quo, you'd better get in there.
You
and
have to be
become
part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, you got to get in there. You can't stand outside the castle and yell and scream with your pitchfork and expect to get anywhere. You need siege cannons, but you also need people to go over the wall.
Yeah.
On this topic of cardinal sins and committing rhinoism and all of that stuff. Maybe the thing that had me so particularly riled up about this Rand Paul dust up is that I don't think that. Not only do I not think that it was a bad move, but I also think it was the right move. That is something that I totally don't mind Rand Paul taking a talking point off of the table. I totally don't mind. It's a trade-off that you're going to make. Is it going to piss some of us off? Yeah. But the point is that when it's 2016 and it's Hillary Clinton against Rand Paul, are you going to not go to the ballot box because Rand Paul sort of blew off the issue of really super advancing voter ID or whatever? It's one of those things where I think that the value that you're trading here, the value that you're gaining by making a statement like this, you're gaining more in the eyes of the public, which is what you need to win, than you are losing in the eyes of your constituents, the Republicans, the base as a whole, because when it comes down to it, they're going to be crawling over glass for Rand Paul over Hillary. For sure. There's no two ways about it. You can't convince me otherwise. The establishment, the Tea Party, the whatever. It's just the way it's going to work. I am all for trading single issues for a victory in 2016.
Well, and again, that becomes its substance, its topic and style, and the topic of taking voter ID off the table and saying, hey, it's not that big of it's not my top of mind issue. Hey, I'm cool with that, and I think most people are. It was the style of, does this mean that Rand is going to be doing more of this where he's siding with the media against the right and elevating himself at my expense? Do I need to be on the lookout for that? Is this a warning? And that's what I'm looking at, is style versus substance. And that's where I am with so much of the moderation thing, because I don't want Eric Erickson to change his principles. I want him to change his technique. I want him to be more moderate in technique. I don't want him to be, I don't care that he be more moderate in his beliefs. I want him to be more moderate in his technique. The way he says things, the way he tries to persuade people. You don't need to change your principles. And we end up with a lot of our politicians thinking that they need to be more moderate, and that means they have to change their beliefs and be more leftist in their belief system in order to be more moderate. You can be more moderate in your behavior, where your foundation of beliefs are still rock-ribbed conservative, but you're much more reasonable and moderate in your behavior. And that's where I don't think a lot of people differentiate the two, and they get all balled up on the word moderate, and they think, oh, if you're moderate, that must mean you are a leftist.
Does it make sense? I mean, don't you kind of think that one reason a lot of people on the right felt that hint of McCainism in what he said, even though obviously we all know he's nowhere like that.
It was a flashback.
Well, what I mean is this. The reason, first of all, what he said was, I think, like I said, I love the idea of bringing it down, DEF CON, de-emphasizing and all this.
Mhm.
It's not a great strategy there. I'm cool with it. But it did come off as somewhat dismissive of us on the right. But here's the big thing. Rand has to remember his father's name is Ron Paul. And his father, out of the 10 candidates up on that podium, probably was number one in tearing into the Republicans on several issues and really being dismissive of several large, quantities of the right. Okay? And there were one or two who might have equaled him. But, I mean, Ron tore into. I mean, he was basically blaming America's bombing for everything that radical Islam was doing in the Middle East. I mean, that's an exaggeration, but it felt that way. He was just going over the top. And so I think people are a little sensitive to when Ron Paul's son seems possibly dismissive of the right. Does that kind of make sense?
Yes.
Maybe even hypersensitive.
I can understand that. Again, it is my opinion that I don't. The people that I care about us messaging to more than the Republicans right now, and when it comes to Rand, this is especially true. I care about the center. I care about the guys that we're going to have stay home for the election. I'm worried not so much about our base as I am about everything else, and that's where my perspective on this is, and that's why I don't feel the same kind of I'm under assault, because I'm absolutely all for stricter regulations when it comes to how we deal with elections. I absolutely am. It's just that I also feel as though I can shrug this off. I mean, it's not something that is going to bug me.
Well, JD, I see it more as a neutral, not a net positive at all. Because here's why. You've got the far right, the far left, in the middle, right? You're right. The far right's going to turn out for him anyway. But the inner city urbanites are not going to be more willing to stay home or turn out for him because of this either. They're not going to say, oh, well, we trust. No, they're not. But the people in the middle, I got to be honest, this is an issue that doesn't resonate either way with the vast majority of people in the middle. I don't think it's going to have much of an impact either way. I think he's angered some of his base. He's removed maybe a little anger from the other side. But let me tell you again, as a former Democrat, they don't care. Their hate is so intense at him or anybody put out by the right. Nothing is going to decrease their hatred enough to matter. And I also agree with you that the people on the right are definitely going to vote for him over Hillary, and they will turn out regardless. I think it's a net neutral. I don't see it as a winner.
I hope it's a learning experience for him, is what I hope. I hope he looks at the way this all came out and he says, oh, okay, maybe there are different ways to say that. Huh, okay, cool. I just hope he learns from it.
Two things. A former chief of staff and the director of his PAC says, Senator Paul was having a larger discussion around criminal justice reform and restoration of voting rights, two issues he's been speaking about around the country and pushing for in state and federal legislation. First of all, okay, that's number one. And what that specifically gets to is the race issue, which is where Rand Paul was actually headed in those discussions, because of the question of whether a person is committed a felony, has the opportunity to regain their rights once they've served their sentence, which is an issue that I think all conservatives and Republicans can talk about, especially in the manner of redemption and being able to make things up that they've done wrong. And here's the actual words that he said, and this is what I thought was key. Everybody's gone completely crazy on this voter ID thing. I think it's wrong for Republicans to go too crazy on this issue because it's offending people. What he's doing there is very subtly saying there are legitimate concerns here, and there are people who go over the top. Now, was that the best way to say it? Probably not. It was probably more off the cuff. But that is what he was doing. He was talking specifically about voter ID, about retribution and restoration of rights, and whether those two are permanent, where one is permanent or the other is available. And that is an issue if you look at it in tandem with, and look how long it's taken me to explain this, but if it is an issue if you look in tandem with the high incarceration rates among black males in the United States, which is why voter ID is a target red flag issue for Democrats to use to claim racist and shut the conversation down. So just going from his own words and from his PAC chair, that's what I'm getting out of that.
Well, can we kind of, look, we can go round and round forever. Can we kind of come to a bit of a consensus of, look, he's trying to de-emphasize an issue that I think to a degree we'd be wise to de-emphasize. His delivery, hopefully he learned a little for future reference on his delivery because it unnecessarily angered the base.
Absolutely.
So,
yes, as much as I think that the base is unnecessarily angered because they're
of course
jacked up and stupid sometimes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And why are so many of our bloggers and pundits so eager to publish articles about how crappy conservatives are rather than focusing on the real enemy? I mean, why do they do that? Does the left do that? I mean, I don't read leftist blogs or any of those people. Do they tear down their own with the same eagerness with which our guys tear down our own?
No,
occasionally, yes.
I'm more conservative than you. See, I just proved it.
Well, and also they're writing. Honestly, they're writing to a market, and here the big problem, as I told people throughout the 2012 campaign, the big problem is not those 10 people up on that stage; it's us out in the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
On the left, there is no market for tearing into your own. On the right, you make money.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Tearing into your own because you become a superstar for why
Right.
Leonard so badly. You've got so many people who are kings of their little province. Well, guess what?
Mm-hmm.
None of those little provinces, even if you collect 2 or 3 of them together, can win any elections. And yet, these people can become king for a day and not care if the world goes down because they got enough money. They're good till the world goes down.
Well,
Eric
look,
Erickson gets a contract with CNN.
Yes, and look what he gets to do. He gets to speak for you and me in perpetuity until the next guy knocks him off for being, too much of a rhino or whatever. That is what this has been, a maneuvering of our best representatives as far as reach goes to be the guy who is talking to the most people, and therefore your opinion matters more. And it matters more than mine. Eric Erickson's opinion matters by orders of magnitude more than mine in the long run because he can reach people.
Mm-hmm.
No, because I'm superimposing him kissed by Michael Sam. He'll be done soon.
Good.
Excellent.
Perfectly ethical.
Can I hashtag diplomacy him at the same time?
Oh God! Hashtag diplomacy. Yeah, let's do that. Let's take an issue. Let's take an issue where there are girls who have been abducted by Islamic terrorists, and the thing that we're going to do is make fun of the First Lady holding up a sign with a hashtag.
Yeah.
Great idea. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ann Coulter.
Yeah. It makes us look petty where we have a slam dunk win. It's incredible.
And and the truth is that the substance is right, that
Sure.
that the left is vapid and self-obsessed, and holding up a piece of paper with a hashtag on it is absolutely the dumbest thing that you could do for foreign policy. It's useless and it's absolutely self-indulgent. But making fun of it when it's the First Lady actually trying to do something because she cares about the girls in Nigeria, and cares, when I said cares, I was doing air quotes. Okay, so she really does care. But making fun of that is absolutely part because it makes us look like asses.
Right, because what is she telling all the people who are following her? She's telling them that she cares and that this is an important issue, and that, what we're seeing on the right is, oh my gosh, how stupid to think that a hashtag is going to affect foreign policy. And that's fine, and that's a legitimate concern in a way, because obviously this wouldn't be a problem if we still had respect in the world. And yes, and actual people that were capable of actual diplomacy. But what we end up attacking is the left's message of, hey, the First Lady is really concerned about all these people, and look at those stupid Republicans. They don't care about these girls. They just care about making fun of the First Lady no matter what.
They hate everything she does.
Yeah,
They hate her because she's the First Lady. They hate her because she's black.
The treatment of that should have been simply,
ignore it.
Well, yeah, or if you're going to comment, if you're asked about it, I'd say,
Mm-hmm.
well, I think her heart's in the right place. I don't think it has any impact, but okay. Look, and then immediately turn to what we really need is, what is our strategy? What is our this and that? It's just, yeah, it was to actually target that.
Yeah.
That's like targeting, how big her derriere was for a while, or how she dresses. All you're doing is helping.
Because she does have a big butt, and she does dress really badly. But
you see, all you're doing, I got to be honest, I think she's the prettiest First Lady we've had in quite a while. All you're doing is helping. Well, you might as well be writing checks to the DNC.
Right. You're doing something that you're falling into their trap. And yes, hashtag diplomacy is stupid, but a picture of somebody holding up a piece of paper with a hashtag on it, that's the kind of messaging, though it's absolutely really useless and stupid, that's the kind of thing that non-political people see. Right. And Barack and Michelle, they are everywhere. They're on every TV show. They're on non-political TV shows. They're absolutely everywhere, doing everything, always being themselves and caring and all of that kind of stuff. So non-political people see them and see them doing good things, and they see us making fun of them for it.
The hashtag diplomacy, it might be a good PR thing, but it makes us look weak in the eyes of all the other countries. It's like, we invade Ukraine and you hold up a sign. Okay,
right.
I'm going to invade Georgia now. Oh, you held up another sign. So instead of mocking them like Ann Coulter did, or
like the Conservative Union did on Friday, by the way.
Yeah, we did.
I very much disagreed with that Friday fun concept. I will say that. I will say that here, and okay. I will actually say that to every moderator of the CU. And I am really sorry that I didn't speak out against it before it happened, but I was distracted.
But instead of doing that, though, let's point out how bad that is for foreign policy. Let's point out how that hurts the country. Take time to do that instead of making fun of them. Okay,
right.
Well, the timing of the amount of time it takes you to say that is, again, problematic, and this is why they win so often on things like this, is because it takes 2 seconds to look at and read the hashtag picture,
and you click
Michelle.
Retweet, and you click plus, and you click share, and you click like, and it spreads everywhere.
And that's it. And it is that simple, quick messaging, and it's brilliant on their part, no matter what, because even if it's not serious enough, if they get mocked, then it's those mean old Republicans again. We've got to get smarter than this.
Also, for the record. And this is advice for everyone, but directly at Ann Coulter. One does not hold up a white piece of paper on the internet and think that it's going to stay conveying the message that you had initially. It is absolutely mind-numbingly dumb to think that you are going to hold up a message and then tweet out a picture with a blank canvas. That's all it is, with Photoshop, with any of the 17 billion graphic editors out there. Like, it took all of my self-control to not Photoshop a million different things onto it. It's just, please don't do that. Don't do that. It's not helpful.
Well, I was gonna hold up a sign that said JD rocks. So I guess I won't do that, huh?
Just don't, because it'll turn into JD is awful and a fascist. JD is the next Hitler. There could be any number of different things. In fact, it could be something that wasn't even JD centric. It could be, which is even worse. It's horrible. The things that you could put on.
Well, you change a couple letters in the second part. I mean, it's just
yeah.
Yeah, JD rocks. JD sucks.
Yeah, it's very easily manipulable.
Manipulatable?
You had it.
Whatever.
Manipulatable.
You had it right.
You know what I was trying to say.
Oh, sorry.
I had it right?
Yes.
Sweet. Oh, man. Look at me. I'm all sorts of on point. But still, don't do that. It's not good. Yeah. Sorry about that. It's just a public service announcement. Sometimes people don't know these things about the internet.
Right.
Okay, I'm having a sympathy coughing attack with Fishy. That's just terrible. Don't do that.
Hey guys. One quick thing on the Rand Paul thing. Not anymore on his comment. Don't care, because I think we've kind of got that pretty well diagnosed.
That horse is so dead. Just dead.
That horse is totally dead.
Dead.
But something on a larger issue. I actually got a phone call right before we were to come online here. And it's from a guy where I'm going to be doing a couple presentations for the Reagan Club up in North Denver. And it was really interesting, because I was originally slated just to talk to them about how to break through and reach young and independent voters, and strategically, and how to do that and so forth. And I'm going to be doing trainings with them. He said, Andy, he says, we need something else. I said, okay, what do you need, Mike? And he said, I've been talking, he says, because I've been doing lots of phone calls on various issues, he said, and with Republicans, literally hundreds and even thousands, he and a couple others. He said, and we have been hearing one overriding message over and over and over and over and over again. I said, what's that? He said, they're angry. They're disenchanted with the Republican Party. They're disenchanted with the conservative movement. They're disenchanted with the Tea Party. They're disenchanted with everything else. They're angry. They're frustrated. And they are totally disunified. They're not motivated. In a year when the other side is crushed and we should overrun them, like ants overrunning food after a picnic, he said, they are absolutely despondent, because they're angry and divided, and all of them said, if this guy gets it, I'm not voting. If that guy gets it, I'm not voting. They're willing to stay home. And the only reason I bring up the Rand Paul thing again is I just think Leslie makes a good point, not just with Rand Paul, but all these candidates. They have to be very careful at just how easy it is. How easy it is to alienate parts of the base right now, because it wants to be alienated. Now,
Right.
Now the big thing that means is we've got to structure what we're doing to change the base to not want to be alienated so much, and show them the value in not wanting that. But in the meantime, when John Boehner comes off and makes some dismissive comments of various parts of the base, that is
John Boehner can say hello and people get pissed off.
No, I agree, but he's also said some things that really were dumb,
Yeah.
where you're just like, yeah, and then he said some other things where they weren't, where they just exaggerated them because they wanted to be angry at him.
Right.
But these leaders have got to understand the powder keg they're dealing with right now. And so Mike actually had me change the teaching I'm going to do and incorporate uniting the right into it. And
Good.
he said, my gosh, I didn't know how needed this was. Can you please lead with that and then go into the other stuff? I said, yeah, sure, I can do that. But it is out there. And right now, but here's what I have found when I do these teachings, and I'll close with this and then I'll shut up for a while. Sorry I've been so talkative. What I have found when I do these teachings is people want to be united. They want to be this angry at each other. They're weary of it, but it's all they know. And even their leaders like Ann Coulter and Rush Limbaugh and all these people, and Mark Levin, who I love, and all these people are tearing into each other so much. It's all they know. They don't think there's anything else. And when they hear they can unite and how they can work together and how they can go forward without demanding agreement across the board, they actually love it. But I wish they were hearing it from more.
The amount of passion that's out there that is currently being directed as anger at our own side, because we hate the other side, and that's kind of a constant that we always have. But we're so very balled up in anger because I think it's because we don't want to be apathetic. So we're being angry at each other and our candidates and our leaders, and everybody's disappointing us. And that can so easily be turned around into love for the leader who comes along, who really is a leader, not just a politician, but somebody who can rally and unite the base and lead us. But by the same token, as conservative, libertarian Republicans, we tend to be a little bit more leery of and maybe a little less fascinated with stars and leaders. So it's like we're primed and ready for the leader to come along, and I think we could, in a heartbeat, rally around the right guy and take him to greater heights, because we want that. We really do want somebody to rally around, but I think by the same token, we need to rally around each other rather than a personality.
Yeah.
And we want to rally. We want to turn our energy from this massive negative into a massive positive, because hate turns to love, love turns to hate. Apathy is sort of off there someplace different. We feel very strongly, and we want to feel love for someone, and we end up doing this "Are you my mother?" kind of deal. And we did it in the primary. We were in love with it's Rick Santorum's day. Okay, no, now we're in love with Herman Cain. Are you my mother? No. Okay, next. Okay, and we ended up with Mitt Romney because we kept looking for the guy we were going to fall in love with, and we never found him, and now we're not, okay, I wanted to fall in love with somebody. There was never the right person for us all to fall in love with, so now we're just going to hate each other and everybody. But we still want to fall in love.
Can it be the digger truck? I like the digger truck, the one with the, and it goes... That was my favorite one.
The bite dump.
But here's the thing. You know why Herman Cain sold so well, until he imploded and the left did a great job of, erecting something that wasn't there and killing him. But I know, I use that on purpose for JD's because I love JD laughing and grimacing. It's just so fun. And by the way, I take photo shots of that and put them up all over my house. And that too. And
JD is wallpaper.
And, whenever I want to argue with my wife, all I do is hold up a picture of JD in that pose, and I say, "This is what I mean." Okay. But, and then she says, "How can you be that?" It's not me; it's him. So I can even blame it. Where did I go? Okay. Here's what I mean. Herman Cain didn't sell Herman Cain. Herman Cain sold us.
Mm-hmm.
And too many of the, while it is our fault that we're so divided, not the candidates, they're also not the solution, because they're not looking at a divided conservatism and going out and selling all of conservatism, which by doing that, you help unite conservatism. We start rallying together just by hearing somebody go to the public of that district, state, or country and say, I love these guys. Here's why I love these guys. Here's why you should love these guys. These people are great. Here's why. okay? And they're not doing that, and it's making, and that makes it a lot easier for us to stay divided and just keep shooting at each other because we have nobody telling us and rallying us in that way. Does that make sense?
Yes. And we want that, we want that leader. What's the 80s song? I'm holding out for a hero. Oh my God, was that Footloose or something? Footloose or Flashdance? I'm thinking that. And I think I just embarrassed JD again.
It was totally Footloose. Don't ask me why I know that still.
I had the soundtrack. Come on cassette tape. You bet.
The best scene from Flashdance was actually in Tommy Boy. Anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
But, we do want the hero, and the best thing about a hero is the hero reflects back to you and makes you feel good about yourself. You did touch on that. And the selfie society that we are, very shallow and self-obsessed, we do need somebody who will really take advantage of that. And I don't know that person is out there. And somehow we have to find a way to make that for ourselves without it being hero worship of a guy. And why did Obama become as popular and successful as he is? Because he confirmed everyone's suspicions that they were awesome. He made everyone who voted for him, he confirmed to everyone who fell in love with him that they were brilliant for doing so. And he made his supporters convinced that they were better people because they were his supporters, because their cause was the just cause and the right cause and all of that. And he made his people feel he made his people feel good about themselves for supporting him. And we really don't have a guy like that. Mitt Romney was certainly not the kind of guy who made me feel good for supporting Mitt Romney.
No.
Ronald Reagan was kind of that way.
I think he was very much that way.
And I hate to always go back to Reagan, because that's just so, of course she's going to bring up Reagan.
I feel really bad because I'm apparently really easy when it comes to this. Like I felt great about supporting Mitt Romney. I was happy about Mitt Romney, even though, I mean, the thing is that once he became the candidate,
oh, I was totally on board, yes.
Whatever. I was super happy. I mean, and even some of his, like listening to his speeches, I really liked his speeches. I don't know. Again, it might just be me, but I personally, I really loved Mitt Romney. I thought he was a really decent candidate. I think that he had some bad advice when it came to the debates. I think that he could have pushed a little harder on some things there, but, there are a lot of things that went wrong in that 2012 election, and a lot of things that could have swung things in our direction. So
Romney was a good, strong candidate. Look, he was a strong. The guy had fixed a state, the Olympics, and a bunch of businesses. A guy who was Mr. Fix It, Mr. Turn It Around. Yeah, you can argue, but going into a situation where we needed everything that he was.
Yeah, we did.
Okay, he was ideal. The problem wasn't him, and the problem was us. We were too divided. We were way too divided. And I felt, a lot like you did, JD. I do think he tried to sell conservative, believe in America. Yeah, right? That was his thing. That was great. I think he could have done more of it. Like I said, I know I'm tooting the same horn here, but Herman King was the only one who I just felt made, and 999 I didn't think was going to sell. I just didn't think it was good. I thought it took it took the sights off of what he was doing so strongly. Not that I cared about it either way, but he was selling us, and we were rallying.
Yeah.
I feel as though that a lot more instead of his if you're talking about the debates, then absolutely, but I feel as though as Mitt Romney sort of matured as a candidate in the process of the presidential election, once he was through with the primaries, I think that in a lot of his speeches, a lot of his appearances, when he was interacting with a crowd, I do really feel as though that selling us on us. I think that occurred. It's just it wasn't in a public venue. It certainly wasn't in as public a venue as the debates. So yes, I get what you're saying there, and I agree with you. I think that Herman Cain definitely did the best job out of all of the candidates during the debates of selling the American people on the American people. And I think he had high favorability just as a person, not so much as a candidate. But yeah, I certainly agree there. But I do think that Mitt is the whole 2012 election. We lost it, and there's bad tastes in everybody's mouth. But I don't really think that the candidate Mitt Romney was as bad as
No.
he gets, as gets lumped on him.
He was a good candidate. I mean, look, I think Herman Cain sold us. I think Newt Gingrich explained us, which was great. And I think Mitt impressed us because he was so impressive. I mean, his character, his track record, everything he had done. My gosh.
Right.
Perfect.
Wow.
Taking a far left state and putting it in the black. I mean, dear Lord, the guy was incredibly impressive. No, I think he was a terrific. And by the way, I thought the second best debater to Newt up there. I mean, so I thought he was very good. I just, he should.
I think he got some bad advice and followed it, which was kind of surprising that a man of his expertise and experience would follow bad advice. It was like, odd. But he did.
He did not use Paul Ryan's strengths at all.
No, he didn't.
Having Paul Ryan, Mr. Brilliant, on the budget and all this kind of stuff, go out there and do nothing but mouth Mitt Romney lines was really, really surprising.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry to go so far into 2012. Sorry.
But I think JD used the right phrase. We lost. Obama did not necessarily win that election. We lost it.
Oh yeah.
And that's the right way to phrase it. Obama won in 2008. Well, okay, we lost too because of McCain. But in 2012, that loss is on us. And it was a lack of unity.
It's not just lack of unity. Think about what happened going into the election. We had Sandra Fluke in whenever that was. That was what, 2011 that happened. We had Sandra Fluke in the War on Women that scorched everyone. Then we have the further affirmation of the War on Women with the ridiculous statements from Aiken. And then by Murdoch. So we have that going against us. We couldn't take advantage of the situations overseas and how they were degrading because, whatever reason, we decided not to jump on that. It's hard to deal with the economy when you make statements about the 47%.
Romney didn't go for the jugular with Benghazi.
And all the while, we have pundits and people on our side saying that we're going to win, and saying how awful the opposition was and how poorly they're doing. And there was just such a tidal wave of stuff that we were that we crashed headlong into. It was not a good season at all. Candy Crowley did stop that, yes.
Yeah.
Well, and here's the thing. When we look at the after-action stuff and we look back at all these things that happened, we look back at the War on Women and the bad comments by the senators and the Benghazi, debacle that's was horrible and that should have impacted people. What we're left with after the result is two options. Either our side lost or Barack Obama won. Well, nobody thinks Barack Obama was good enough to win outright on the merits, that it was a comparative battle. But when you're looking at our side, is it more important to people that were, political, armchair quarterbacking the next, whatever, to say, oh, it's that guy's fault or it's this guy's fault, rather than saying, I didn't do enough. And that is a huge difference. And this culture has sprung up around giving people cover for not doing enough themselves.
But Felicia, how did this happen in conservatism? Conservatives take responsibility for failure. Traditionally they did, but recently conservatives are looking to point the finger of blame anywhere but themselves.
Right.
All they want to do is blame 2 or 3 of those people out of the 10 up on that stage.
Conservatives used to be about smaller government too, but then they started doing things like mandatory ultrasounds for pregnant women, and how is that not big government? We used to be smaller, limited, more more freedom for people, less power for government, but we aren't like that either. So it's a sea change, and it's a cultural change.
Well, I mean, don't you see and I'm a proud Tea Partier, okay? But to criticize the Tea Party on the right, to be critical just of them in strategy in this or that case, is just as forbidden as being critical of a person of color on the left.
Mm-hmm.
It's insane. I mean, when did they become where did they get protected status? I thought on the right there is no protected status.
But look at what we do. We talk about those bubbles. We talk about the conservative bubble that, I listen to Hannity and Rush and Levin, and I watch, this, that, or the other show, and I get into my own different, world. I don't go to places like Slate Magazine or Think Progress or HuffPost, because...
Mashable. For the love of God, everybody needs to be on Mashable.
But you see what I'm saying here is that we've created our own sphere. We are no longer even looking at issues intellectually honestly. We are looking for affirmation, and we keep doing it. We don't want to be enlightened and educated and fully versed on a subject and understand it well enough to advocate for it and whatever. We just want to go to the places where we hear what we want to hear. And that is a huge shift in what conservatism was supposed to be.
Well, I mean, and here's another thing. Since we have turned all our guns upon one another, because we've done that, we've completely... I mean, we don't... When you're too busy doing that, you don't even see the easy strategy that you could be doing to win. Look, right now, going into 2014, going into November... I got the easiest selling point for the right of all. Oh, there's no. This one's unbeatable, untouchable, easy, and huge, and it would be easy to package it in 30-second ads. Compare and contrast the success of Republican-run states versus Democrat-run states on their budgets balancing, job creation numbers, and pick or 1 or 2 other things. I mean, it's overwhelming. Okay, any job creation that's happening overwhelmingly in the nation is almost all happening in Republican states. Okay, budgets are balancing by far more in Republican states. Taxes are being held down by far more in Republican states. So here we have the easiest campaign issue in the world. Just compare and contrast. Okay, everywhere that Republicans run is great. Everywhere that Democrats run is Detroit-ifornia. Okay, and we can't even do that. We're too busy attacking each other and hyperventilating over when Rand Paul goes a touch off script. I mean, I don't get it. It's frustrating.
I would guarantee you that if that message got made, and outside party, inside the party, whatever. Say if we did it, if we put that together in a 30-second ad and put it out there, and then we simultaneously did an ad that was attacking one of our champions, I can tell you which one would get bigger hits.
Right. Isn't that crazy?
Yes, and it's what we are. And that's why I'm so frustrated that we don't have the reach and the voice that we should have, because it's not sexy. It doesn't sell. Uniting, sounds really great and everybody talks about it. What they mean is, I want you to come over to my side. I want you to think like me.
Do you want your state to be California or North Dakota? Okay, it's that simple. Okay, let me show you the numbers. Here you go. There you go. Okay, and those numbers you can flash on the screen in comparative things. You can flash the 3 top comparisons on the screen. California, North Dakota. Okay, the Democrat candidate in our state wants to go this way. The Republican candidate wants to go that way. Game, set, match, done, over.
And no one will care.
Yes. Oh, it would sell.
Not like that stinking Chris Christie bashing video that the next guy puts out.
No, I'm talking in the general though. That would move.
Oh, right.
Here, that would move a lot of the middle. No, you're totally right. But our side doesn't care about putting that stuff out because it wants to lash out at itself. But that kind of thing would move the middle so fast. I mean, my gosh, it's ridiculous. In football terms, economically, our states are basically 16-0, and the others are 0-16, and we're having a hard time showing that our side is better. This is insane. It's insane.
Well, and though if you look at the video views on RNC's YouTube channel, that ought to tell you something too.
And they have a lot of good videos too, and it's just like, oh my god.
We can't even get our own guys to share RNC messaging.
Really?
Well, when was the last time you were there? When was the last time you checked the RNC YouTube page?
Good point.
Well, and look at all the people that haven't shared. I mean, I saw you guys had, 8,000 some views on I'm a Conservative or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah. How come that's only 8,000 views? That dwarfs quite a bit of the RNC's videos on their site. And why do you only have 8,000 views? That's insane. That's ridiculous. We suck that much.
Yeah, and I guarantee you that there was more money put into every single one of the RNC videos than was put into your video. So, because those had to be focus group, they had to be checked out. And focus group, by the way, was the thing that I was searching for when I said Lunsing. It's disgusting. It's disgraceful. It's stupid that we aren't getting those messages out that need to be out there and need to be that are actually helpful.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry to go just on a whining tirade there. Sorry about that, guys.
No, because I think those are questions that we need to ask, and we also need to look at solutions for. And this is always my motto: don't propose. Don't whine about a problem until you got a solution. I go on and on about that, but this one, I'm stuck. I've been thinking for a year and a half, how do we get a broader reach so that we can, promote guys like the Party of Choice and get more views on ideas that need to be heard and capture people's attention, and going to CPAC and passing that stuff out, and going this month to the conference in the Woodlands and passing stuff out there too. I mean, we're going to be doing what we can. But it's not enough, obviously, and for some reason, there's not a mood in this country, among conservatives, to find solutions yet. Maybe it hasn't gotten bad enough for them, which is darn scary. What we're going to have to go through until people actually do want to win. It's like, I don't know, a company having to go almost bankrupt before trying to correct itself.
Well, one thing that's certainly hurt is
maybe they're just busy working.
Well, that's part of it.
Maybe I was at work all day. I was at work all day today, and I read Fishy and Leslie's article, but I couldn't really share it. I'll try to share it tomorrow. But there's thousands and thousands of people on the left that are paid to protest, that are paid to harass people, that are paid to just share things. And we actually have real jobs.
Well, but we can't fix that. We're not going to get Koch brothers money pouring in to get us to do that stuff. It's just not going to happen. And so while that's true, and while it feels good to say it, it's not helpful. You know what I mean? We've got to do double duty. If that means we have an extra shift where we have to sit at the computer for an hour and do some messaging or something, I don't know that that's too much to ask, given the alternative. And I hate to say it that way. It's awful. It's terrible that that's the position that we're in, but that's what I'm thinking.
Well, clearly,
And it goes back to some of the self-righteousness, because whenever I, or really any of us, ask the question of our peers, how come we have such a problem with the activism? We do get the answer, I'm busy with work and with family and with church. And people are, and that's legitimate, and it is in fact true. But it doesn't solve the problem. It explains, it doesn't excuse, it doesn't fix either. Yeah, we spend our time with work, family, and church, and whereas on the left, those people work and they also have families, and many of them do church, but a lot of people who don't do church, they do political activism instead of church. So the hours that we're devoting to church, they're devoting to political activism. Or the hours that we are devoting to some other activity, they are devoting to their political activism, because that's just a function of who and what they are. Political activism, where we see political activism as something that only some people can do, other people are just too busy.
Well, the big thing, and then sorry to toot our horn over here, but the big thing is choice versus control. And what I mean is this: it takes activism to control others. And when you're all those things that you're talking about, go to church, you go to work, all of these are things you do to free yourself, to discover yourself, to discover your beliefs, to discover choices you want to make, and to enhance and empower those choices. Activism helps you control other people, whether they hold your views or not. And the left is 100% committed to control.
And that's right, because what's our dynamic on our side? We want to be left alone.
Right.
Right.
I always ask people, guys, how come every time there's a secessionist movement in a state, we want to secede from the state, we want to secede from the United States, we want to secede from this county or whatever, why is it always conservatives trying to get away from liberals and never the other way around? They want us kept around because they want to control us. We want to not be controlled. See what I mean?
See,
I
I
see
thought
what
it
you're
was
saying.
because we were racist bigots. That's what I thought it was. I thought we were just trying to escape from the Mexicans or the blacks or something. I mean, that's what I read in the newspapers. That's why
Sure.
secessionists.
Sure. But yeah, I see what you're saying. It's easier to find 2 hours in your day to come up with ways to control other people than it is to come up with 2 hours in your day to find ways to get people to leave each other alone. I'm going to go read a book instead.
And look at the payoff there too. If you control somebody else via some legislation that you've passed or something, and it doesn't work and it's ineffective, then obviously you didn't pass enough laws or bring out enough control, so you get to do the pattern all over again.
So I do more, right? Okay.
And then in the reverse, for us, what being left alone looks like is just chaos and life and things happening that, I get to choose. And yeah, I might make some stupid decisions, but then, nobody's going to come and bail me out for it. That's how we live. But liberals look at the world and look at places where they can exercise power through pretending to solve problems. But it doesn't matter that they solve them or not. It matters that they get the control.
Well, that's their message. The liberal message to the voters, the underlying message is always the same. Join us, help us get 51% of the vote, and together we will enact revenge on all those groups you don't like, and we will take more from them, and we will reduce their power, their influence, anything. Your bosses, rich people, white people, oil companies, pharmaceutical companies, everybody, anybody, the military, whatever. We will cut them down on your behalf. That is the entire sales pitch. Help us get to 51%, and we will help you, and together we will control all those people.
And you will be a hero.
And you'll be a hero. Okay.
There's no heroism in telling other people, getting together and making other people just leave you alone.
Right. That's not even a program for that. That's just
There's no Hallmark special.
Yeah,
Right.
it's the
Oh
Constitution.
my gosh!
Let's all
It's
just
like
get together and do nothing. Wait.
like that
Well, I'll
horrible.
do that on
like
my
that-
own. Thanks.
It's like that horrible thing on the meme picture. Darn it! And I can't even think of what it is. Not antisocial, but what's the word I'm looking for? That you're introvert. Introverts assemble quietly at our own houses by ourselves. Whatever that thing is, it's like that. It's just it's hard. It's a hard concept to get out there to group a bunch of individualists together and get them to do something.
And you certainly don't want too much liberty because then people will be getting all stoned next door to you.
Oh
and,
God, nothing.
People will be having, babies and abortions and everything all over the place. And, you won't recognize this world if you have too much freedom.
Somebody's gonna be smoking. Do you know what's? Can you imagine if somebody was smoking, like?
Can you imagine them
the
eating
street?
trans fats?
Ooh, bad.
True
Or
story.
barbecue, which is cancer and environmental problems all wrapped up into one.
True story. My mom was on top of that whole monosodium glutamate, high fructose corn syrup thing. So me being a good listener, and that being the reason why we don't get Lucky Charms or Fruit Loops. When I was 5, we were at a grocery store, and out loud I said to my mom, "Does that lady know that she's getting cereal with high fructose corn syrup in it?"
I bet people loved you. Yeah.
I grew out of my nanny statism, so mostly.
Yeah, but did that lady know? Did she know
Did she know what?
that she was getting cereal with high fructose corn syrup in it?
Judged on the scowl, probably. I don't know. Maybe.
Maybe.
It was a long time ago. It was 20 years ago.
But that's a good parallel because that is what the left has done in just tossing terms and throwing out, mentioning these different threats to people. And
Oh my God! I need to. I'm sorry. I need to. I need to quickly take a small tangent here. I was watching YouTube, and they had a commercial for John Oliver's new show on HBO or Showtime or whatever. I was going to ignore it and hit the skip ad button after 5 seconds, but the first 5 seconds were very compelling because he was talking about climate science and how the science was settled, and that how it's not even an argument, and that the debates that are held on TV that are usually one person against Bill Nye the Science Guy are not a fair representation of the actual science. So because it's a 1-to-1 ratio instead of having as many people on the on the global climate change is a real thing and humans are causing it and it's a really, really bad thing. Or saying, oh, hey, maybe the science isn't settled. So then he paraded out Bill Nye and 60 other scientists against 3 people and had that this is decisive, the science is settled, this is how the argument actually goes, and this is what you are a fool and an idiot and just absolutely wrong.
Unicorn farts.
Yeah, if you believe anything but climate science, the way that we tell you to believe it and that the science is settled. So I think that's sort of on the same thing that we're talking about, but it's just the way issues get so entrenched that we have a hard time.
well, and look at the pictorial. Look at the pictorial. You have all
Absolutely.
those guys on one side, and you have 3 guys on the other side. And right is now a matter of might. I mean, it's essentially that age-old argument, might makes right, only this time the might comes in numbers rather than strength. And it's all about making people feel uncomfortable with unpopular positions among the left. And that is how, I mean, obviously, that's how they've operated. And that's a very, very blatant example. I wish you could find that original, and we could do a piece on that, because I would love to tackle that. It doesn't matter how many people are wrong or right if you have a wrong and right involved. And what they're doing is just equating numbers. And this is what they do in elections too. Obviously, let's get rid of the Electoral College, because if everybody wants something, or the majority of Americans want something, it must be right.
I was thinking about this today, and it's like, how settled can the science really be if every decade you're proved wrong and you change the name? In the 70s, it was global cooling, and the Earth was going to freeze to death. And then in the 80s and 90s, it was global warming, and then that was proved wrong. So now you change it to climate change. It's like, clearly the science isn't settled because you've been wrong every decade.
Well, now they're trying to make it change so that they can just cover everything instead of admitting to the fact that it's just cycles.
I don't know if because it's after midnight, so I don't know if you want to see the video or not. But I have it here. I have it found. So I don't know what the status of the meeting is, but I do have the video if you want to see it.
Go for it.
What video? Which one?
The video of the John Oliver thing happening. So
Oh, yeah.
The climate change deal.
Yeah, I'll put it in the.
Click on that there. Corey went to bed, and
I have to click on it. Just there's going to be
my IT team is gone.
there's if you look on the left-hand side of your screen, there's going to be a little red YouTube button.
Yeah.
Click on that.
Okay.
Okay, is everybody there?
Yep.
It says,
Okay.
welcome to YouTube Hangouts, just extra that. Last week tonight?
Last week tonight, and I'll hit the play button if everybody's ready.
Okay.
Well, there's that.
That's pathetic.
And effective.
So effective. We shouldn't even be having the debate to begin with. We shouldn't even be having the debate to begin with. That's how ridiculous having this debate is, because we have clearly the science is on our side. Clearly, we should not be having this debate to begin with. Number one, that's what he wants you to remember. We shouldn't be having this debate to begin with.
Flat earther.
And we are the cool people, and we are going to mock the uncool people. And wasn't it Gutfeld that wrote the book about the cool kids and how the cool kids are actually the bullies and the mean kids, and the liberals are the cool kids, and you see it in the snark and the dismissiveness and all of the sarcasm that they use. They come at everything from the presumption that they are absolutely correct, and that anybody who disagrees with them is stupid, wrong, and evil, and that they are cool, and if you disagree with them, you are uncool, and you should probably just go kill yourself, and we're going to make fun of you. I mean, it's
Plus, there's more of us than there are of you.
right.
And that's an important statement to make, because that's a visual representation to people out there who are watching John Oliver's show, who I don't know how many people watch his show, but you're a part of the minority if you are not with Bill Nye's team. And Bill Nye is a widely loved figure of American culture. So.
And it's like that on everything. Again, the numbers make right, and you're an outlier for having that bizarre position. You know, you're not only not cool, but we outnumber you, and so we're going to outvote you, and you might as well just give up.
Alinsky was he was not even close. He didn't realize the extent to which his system works. You know, he didn't have the kind of imagination necessary to predict the kind of stuff that he has wrought. And
that they can be such massive bullies in this campaign against bullying. You know, and without even understanding
and who
how
is going to
duplicitous
say,
they are.
And who is going to say, who's the person, who is the genius that's going to say we shouldn't be against bullies? You know, who's going to open their mouth and decide that that's a wise thing to say, oh, we should be supportive of bullying, or we should be supportive of bullies, because instantly that person is going to be, you know, it's suicide. It is, you are coming against something that you can't deal with. So.
Yeah. Well, gang, we need to call it a night, because I have to get my dog to the vet early in the morning and all sorts of fun stuff. I'm sure all of us have lives. Well, y'all do. I don't really have one, but.
Well, have a good night, everybody.
Thank you guys for another wonderful Tuesday. You talked me off the ledge. Because before this, I was like, oh my God, I hate everybody. I'm checking out of politics. I'm just not going to do it anymore.
I don't like the paperwork.
Well, and I was there last week, and I got a phone conversation today about another project locally to get involved in. So, yeah, you just pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and start all over again.
And there will be a tomorrow, and it'll be a good one, because today was a good one too. So, and thank you guys, and I will see you guys all next week.
You got it.
Later. Bye.